public safety.
Hundreds of tons of steel and catastrophe. And all because people were smoking dope and not paying attention and not doing their job.
Companies cracking down.
If you use drugs, don't come to work for us at this mill.
And you need to fill it up halfway.
With random tests and undercover spies.
You will be allowed to set up drug purchases.
Got 25 bucks on you?
It takes spies, it takes people to infiltrate to find out what the other side's doing.
As the drug war goes to work. Do you work with someone who uses drugs? Don't be surprised if the answer is yes, and don't be surprised if your boss is doing something about it. More than half of the nation's biggest companies already test workers for drugs. The main reason? Money. Drug abuse costs American business tens of billions of dollars a year in lost productivity. And that does not include the price to individuals, those who must submit to the tests, and those who become victims of someone else who is working high.
The worst train wreck in Amtrak's history happened here in Chase, Maryland, January 4th, 1987.
Clear path.
An Amtrak train hit a Conrail train that shouldn't have been there. Not only was the Conrail's warning equipment not working, but its engineer and brakeman had shared a marijuana joint minutes before the crash. 16 people died. One was Cerise Horn on her way back to Princeton University after Christmas break.
The television was on all night at the crash scene. And in the middle of the night, about 4 a.m., Corinne was watching, and they said they'd taken a 16-year-old girl off the train. And Corinne came up and said, could be Reese. And it turned out it was.
The Horns mourned Cerise, but they also acted.
You have to put them in order.
Founded Safe Travel America, an organization lobbying for a bill requiring random drug testing for transportation workers in safety-related jobs.
They recognize that unless citizen action gets out there and beats on the drums and causes the Congress to do something about these problems, that this kind of tragedy is going to happen again.
The Amtrak train was barreling north, 125 miles an hour. The Conrail train was heading north too, ignoring stop signals. Ricky Gates was its engineer.
Of course, he asked if I wanted to get high with it. You know, he produced a half of a marijuana joint.
Cerise Horn's father, Roger Horn.
So they entered here, they slid through the switch, they apparently saw that they were in trouble.
Next thing you know, I looked up and that's when I saw the stop signal. And I did everything I could to try to stop it.
And it must have skidded right down here and skidded through that interlocking right there. And the passenger train's coming up and hit him like that. And the result of that was carnage. There were cars all over the place, and those cars were just piled up on top of each other like a bunch of crazy logs. Hundreds of tons of steel and 125 miles an hour and catastrophe. And all because people were smoking dope and not paying attention and not doing their job. Terrible. Terrible.
Ricky Gates is serving a 5-year sentence for manslaughter here at the Maryland Correctional Institute. The other prisoners call him Choo-Choo. Gates pleaded guilty, but he is not sure marijuana caused the accident.
I was more or less a chronic smoker as far as my system had a tolerance for marijuana, I believe. And even on top of that, I don't believe it happened so quick. I don't believe I had time to really get high on it.
So it was really just you and your partner weren't paying much attention.
Yeah.
I've read statements of yours that said there was a lot of drinking on the railroad. There was a lot of dope on the railroad. Is that so?
We did quite a bit of drinking. It wasn't unusual for everybody on the crew to come out with a case or a fifth. to get through a run.
Drug abuse, the lack of maintenance, the appalling personnel procedures. Those things didn't just happen on that day. Those things have been happening for years and years and years, and they were known to the regulators, they were known to the carriers, but nobody did anything about it.
So the Horns, amateur lobbyists, went to Washington, a whole new world.
One of the things that we've learned in this 2-year-long civics lesson is that there are 1,000 times more ways to kill a bill than there are to pass it.
Last year, Horn's bill passed the Senate, but not the House. He's trying again, meeting with co-sponsors Mikulski of Maryland and Hollings of South Carolina.
2 years after the worst disaster in Amtrak history, we still don't have a drug testing bill.
Now, I've come up with some suggestions that are really incorporated in the bill that we think will meet the concerns of the workers.
Organized labor is making a bad mistake on this one. We have evidence galore, overwhelming evidence, as we call it, to justify this particular measure in behalf of the public safety.
We have never wanted this issue to become an anti-labor campaign.
We're working with them as best we can, and yours is the particular good help that we have.
Well, I'd have to say that if it were not for the opposition of the transportation unions, we would have had this bill a long time ago.
The employee is treated as if he or she is guilty.
Larry Mann is the lawyer and lobbyist for the railway unions.
You cannot search someone without probable cause. It oversteps the boundaries. It's Big Brother right on top of you.
We have a right to think that when we get on a train that the guy who's operating the train is fit to do so. So I think that the privacy argument is a real argument. We ought to think carefully whenever we ask anybody to bend a little bit some of those precious guarantees that we have in the Fourth Amendment. And we should ask whether or not we're doing it for a really, really good reason. And I think in this case, we are doing it for a good reason. The statistics are there.
But you can't take an individual accident and establish a federal testing program based upon one incident. It's just not fair when you look at the whole country and look at all the programs that are in effect and are effective.
In some areas, I agree with the Constitution, but at the same time, looking on my experience especially, the only way to stop people like me is to do random drug testing, because everybody's going to deny that they did it.
In this case, this person's right to privacy, to use drugs, Mr. Gates, took away our child's and 15 other people's right to life. Is that appropriate? That's what we have to weigh.
Marion, Ohio, March 1988.
Hands right there. Put him right there. He's under arrest. Put him up there, right?
Employees of a Whirlpool plant are being busted for dealing drugs on the job.
Put a warrant for your arrest. For what?
They were exposed by a fellow factory worker. In real life, a spy.
Where is this one? Yeah.
He was hired to investigate drug use in the workplace.
Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can will be used against you
Do you understand those?
People do it in the warehouse. They do it when they go on breaks out in their car in the parking lot. If somebody wants to get high, they're going to find a place to do it no matter where they're at.
Former Whirlpool employee Tammy Bays is serving 18 months for selling cocaine to an undercover agent.
I sold to that undercover agent 6 times.
And at this point, you still considered yourself safe and dealing with someone you thought you could trust?
Yeah, I did. And like I said also, you know, in the back of my mind, even though other people suspected she was an agent, and maybe I did too, I was willing to take the chance.
You live with these people. You know, you're human. You get to know these people. You have feelings for them. Some you like, some you don't like.
Bo Piper is a spy, now coming in from the cold with his family.
Where's the furnace at? This is ugly.
Over the past year and a half at factories in 3 states, he watched co-workers smoke pot and snort coke on coffee breaks.
Where's the furnace at?
Did you hear anything kick on?
then turned them in to local law enforcement.
I'm just so glad to be in one place and know I'm going to be here for a while.
You got swings even, huh?
Piper has just been promoted to senior agent at PLE, Professional Law Enforcement of Dayton, Ohio. It's a company that specializes in clandestine corporate drug investigations, including the one at Whirlpool.
You're not allowed to use drugs, you all know that. And so we're going to teach you how to get around that by simulating the usage.
On your dust, pin joints, angel dust. The really small joints are probably smaller than that one you got right there.
In a 2-week training program, Piper and other agents share their expertise with a class of new recruits, whose identities we agreed to keep secret.
Don't go sticking that thing all up in your mouth and licking on it a lot, like some people stick the whole thing in their mouth. And
Why is it that in the course of a drug buy, when asked to sample a little cocaine to take a snort, you don't do it?
Number one, it's illegal. You just can't do it. Your credibility's shot, your case is gone, and you may have 6 months to a year of work down the drain.
yeah, that's real good. But that's the idea. It takes practice.
I'll just practice.
Hey, Harry, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. Yourself?
This is Bronco Billy.
Oh, no.
This is a cowboy from work.
How you doing?
Hey, Harry.
Have a seat.
All right.
If you're trying to buy drugs and never have, there are other lessons to be learned.
We was cruising around, and we're going to meet some honeycombs later, and thought maybe we'd get lucky and pick up a little nose candy.
You got any identification on you? You got a wallet or anything?
No, man, I don't.
Man, how do I know who you are? Just to say you're with him, that don't mean nothing.
He's a buddy of mine.
So? You're telling me you're from Auburn, and I've never even heard of that city.
Holland.
Where's that at?
Right up the road.
Never heard of it. You don't even know where you live. As far as I'm concerned, you can leave.
I just told you I live down Merrimack.
You can't give me that. There's no such street in Dayton. I know all the streets in Dayton. But you live a half block from the arcade, and you don't know where it's at? I've never been there.
Who's in charge during a drug buy? I mean, obviously you were here, and this was a classroom situation, but in real life, who's in charge?
You want to be in charge. You don't want them to take charge. That's what I did. I took charge. You come in to do a deal, you don't want them taking charge. They're telling you the prices, telling you what they want. You don't want that. You want to take charge. You want to tell them what you'll give, what you want, period.
I'm from Illinois. That's where I'm from.
When did you come here?
I came down here to go to school, and it wasn't for me. I slipped in and got this job done at the plant.
In the next step, trainees test their skills in a tavern with an off-duty cop playing the role of a dealer.
He said you might be able to, you might have some Grandma Coke or so I could get from you. Half it, if that's all you got.
I got that.
You got a half.
You get more if you want.
Okay.
No problem. Seeing you around.
All right.
Thanks, Harry. See you later. Take care, okay?
Buying drugs is one thing.
Oh, baby.
It's not bad.
Just enough.
Later in 48 hours, the trainees get a taste of the real thing.
I never even thought about getting any crack. Them's nice size one. It's two.
Names of everyone in here. I need you to draw 5 separate slips. Today is the day.
Could you send him over to the planer office? Bert's over here waiting for him.
This is not a lucky day for Russ Getty. It is not David Grant's lucky day either.
David Grant. And David Scott.
David Scott was chosen too.
Your number got picked, Dave.
It did.
They are among thousands of Americans subject to random drug testing at the place where they work.
How you doing?
All right.
Good.
Bert Wright runs the testing program at an Oregon lumber company.
Okay, now remember, what I want you to do is, as soon as you've provided the specimen, then just set it right on this pad right here, would you?
Okay.
Okay. And you need to fill it up halfway or better.
I'll see what I can do. I don't...
Yeah, just do your best. I'll be right on the outside here when you're ready. And as soon as you open the door, then I have to come in and measure the sample to verify that it's usable.
David, how do you feel about having to do this?
Oh, it's embarrassing, and I can see the company side of it. You know, if people are taking drugs, it can endanger other people's lives.
You don't want to have to go to a family someday and tell them that your son was just killed, and you're not doing something about it.
Ed Redmond, the safety director at another lumber company, is the enforcer.
If you use drugs, don't come to work for us at this mill. We don't want you here. And that's why we go into our testing program. And unless you have a testing program, you may end up terminating the innocent. You guys doing good?
We're doing good, I guess.
You making any money?
A little bit.
Are you?
A little bit.
Actually, it's a work incentive program, which is we get paid on production. If you get hurt, you lose your bonus. Okay,
and the bonus is money in your pocket.
Exactly.
We're not drug testing to change some moral issue or to change society. We're drug testing for safety.
Drugs are no good, especially if you run a machinery in a mill.
I don't want to work around people that are doing drugs because they're in danger of my life.
I just don't think it's right to pry into people's private lives after work.
Well, what do you think of those guys, who make this constitutional argument that he makes? In other words, the constitutional amendment which says that, you can't engage in unwarranted searches and seizures without probable cause.
Yeah. Well, I gotta make my money. Gotta pay my rent.
Take care of your family.
That's right. So there's, you got that choice whether to do your drugs or go to work.
I was insulted, very insulted.
Michael Wanamaker was forced to take a drug test to get his mill job. The test showed he was drug-free, but Wanamaker hated the experience.
If I have another employment opportunity, I would probably turn it down if I was having to take drug testing and then being subject to further drug testing after employment.
I guess it would be kind of degrading if you think about it. You got to go pee in a little cup and give it to somebody that you don't know, and it's a little embarrassing, yeah. But I think they're a good idea.
As drug testing spreads from industry to industry, so does the debate. Candy Messick, a sprinkler fitter, says a random test that sent her into treatment saved her life.
I had needle tracks all up and down my arms. Weighed about 92 pounds. It's pretty thin, pretty strung out. If it wouldn't be for this test, I can't say that I'd still be alive.
When we first started this, if you said our accident record was at 100%, we're now down to close between 5 and 10%. So we've had, you might say, a 95% decrease in accidents since we started this program.
Are you taking any medication?
Feldine.
Are you taking any over-the-counter drugs? Advil, Sudafed, Actifed, anything of that nature? Okay, and then if you just write none in there. I can see evidence of a change here. We have a number of individuals who have been involved with controlled substances and have gone for treatment and returned and are in the workplace and seem to be doing really fine. What you got planned for the weekend?
And as for the men tested at the first Oregon mill we visited during our 48 hours...
It's no big problem.
I don't know if it's necessary. I guess it is.
They all proved to be drug-free.
Am I an alcoholic? The answer is yes. If you didn't have a problem, the question would never occur to you.
The Hunting Park section of North Philadelphia. The city's drug dealing gangs consider this their territory.
Bad guys are out. Hey, you're right, brother. Think this guy's up to no good? You're done for the night, all right? Go home. Time to go, man.
If you're drinking, go in the bar.
Adios, you're leaving, right?
Disappear. Joseph Murray and Brian King also consider this their territory. They've made hundreds of drug arrests here.
And they'll do anything to get the drugs.
They're about to make another.
To get high. And here you go. Here, Ronco. Put your hands on the car. Spread your feet out. Get over here now. Right now.
Between the two of them, Murray and King have 20 years on the job.
You stay down on your knees. I didn't tell you to move.
But sooner or later, a day could come when they themselves are told to take a urine test for drugs or leave the force.
You're selling cocaine.
The Philadelphia Police Department has a drug testing policy that says any officer promoted, transferred into a special unit, or suspected of drug use must take a urinalysis. Anyone refusing the test is automatically fired. It's not a policy the rank and file greets with great enthusiasm.
Got enough things that you have to worry about doing the job. You don't have to be worrying about peeing in a bottle. What it comes down to is if they're using it, they shouldn't be working. But if they aren't, they shouldn't be thrown off the job just for not wanting to take the urinalysis.
Up until March 17, 1986, no one has ever been able to say one thing bad about Benny James Noble.
Up until the day Officer Benny Noble refused to take a drug test.
You know, it's a stain like someone's throwing paint on you. You know, that hurts. It hurts. That day changed my life around. And from that day, it'll never be the same again.
Benny Noble was fired. So was George Smith.
We're always going to be tainted by this. It's never going to change. I don't care if we got $1 million, we'll still be tainted. We'll still be the 4 officers that didn't take the urinalysis test. That'll be for life.
Smith and Noble and 2 other officers were told to take the urine test after what the department says was enough evidence to suspect they were gathering at these tennis courts to use drugs.
We would never have denied being off our sector. We would never have denied that maybe we would, malingering for a minute. We wasn't given that opportunity, and I tell you something, that was not important to them.
So your worst violation, you think that day was maybe goofing off?
That's all. I know him, and I didn't do a thing. I haven't done a thing. No one could say I did a thing. No one could prove I did a thing.
It's the rules of the game. They're applied evenly. They're applied fairly.
Willie Williams is the commissioner of the Philadelphia Police Department.
The courts have held, up to the United States Supreme Court have held, that we have the legal right as part of a quantified investigation to order a urinalysis. If you fail to cooperate in an investigation, you can be fired.
You were a Vietnam vet, in the Marines, all these commendations. Why put it all on the line and not take a urine test?
Our lawyers told us not to take that urine test. For this reason. A urine test, a urinalysis, is the same thing as a polygraph. It's an investigative tool. It's an invasion of privacy, actually. Okay? This is the reason the lawyer gave us. I'm not a lawyer.
I don't know, miss. I really don't know what would have happened if we'd have taken it against our lawyer's advice.
It might have been negative, and you might be on the force. You might have spent the last 3 years being a police
That's the whole word. That's the key word, might. Nobody knows for sure. They didn't offer us, well, look, you have your union doctors, and you have our doctors, and we'll both, split this down the middle and see what we get. No, it was like, do it, or you're fired.
The police drug testing policy has changed since then. It specifically states now that the accused officer must be told what the accusations are and given a chance to explain himself. A federal appeals court has ruled that Officers Smith and Noble were denied those rights and should get their jobs back. The police department is appealing that decision.
I would have done the same thing if I was in the same situation and my lawyer said not to take it. I don't think I'd have done it either. But it sure does mess up your life. I think it would really suck if them guys were not involved in any narcotics and they're going through all this, even if eventually they win their job back. Yeah, because everybody looks at you. Everybody looks at them like you're dirty. You shouldn't be back on the job anyhow, even if you were innocent in the first place.
It is not uncommon to hear Philadelphia police officers complaining about the test policy or questioning the accuracy of the test. But during our 48 hours, we didn't hear any dispute about the need for a drug-free police force.
We have the right to arrest, detain, and even take a life if necessary. So we have to live just a little higher standard.
You're a symbol. You're a symbol of honesty, trust, respect, integrity. That's what it's all about. If you lose that, if you lose one portion of it, you lost it all.
I just think it would be really hypocritical or kind of ridiculous, for somebody that's using drugs to be out there locking people up for it. The police department don't have no room for people out there doing drugs while they're on the job or even off the job.
After cocaine use, you can usually detect residues in urine for a period of 2 to 4 days. After marijuana, if you smoked marijuana every day and then stopped, you might test positive for a period of up to a month. Of course, there are no perfect tests, but the accuracy on these tests when they're done correctly is extremely high.
This year, laboratories in America will process more than 15 million drug tests, mostly for companies that screen new employees.
The laboratory has 2 combination locks, and we're going to ask that you do step back so that you cannot see the combination that she's putting in.
This is a security precaution so that somebody couldn't go in and tamper with the samples.
This is just to ensure that there's no tampering of the specimen. I don't know if we can see her. Yeah, she's...
This is as close as we can get to her, right?
I'm sorry, I can't let you in there. You are now allowed to enter this laboratory.
Like gold at Fort Knox, urine samples are safeguarded at the SmithKline Labs in Chicago, one of the nation's largest drug testers.
We will ask that each of you sign in.
At this point, there are no names of people or companies on this urine. It's just a number.
No. These are laboratory identification numbers.
Nobody working in the lab has any idea who belongs to these samples.
No.
Urine testing is a 2-step process. Here in phase 1 of the testing, drugs, if any, are first detected in the urine. Even legal substances like cold medicines, headache remedies, and poppy seeds could register the same as hard drugs.
9 specimens have gone into the centrifugal analyzer.
9 unknown specimens.
If the analysis were to end after step 1, as it does in some labs, there would be occasional false positives.
I would say about 10 to 7%.
7 to 10% would be false positive.
MP George is chief toxicologist at SmithKline.
What does that say about confirmation testing?
Absolute necessary.
This is a GCMS, gas chromatography mass spectrometer.
This is a critical stage of the confirmation follow-up test on these specimens.
Yes, at this point.
Drug testing with urine is the most reliable method, experts say, but it only tells companies half the story.
Even though the person could actually be under the influence of drug at the time he's tested, you really can't tell that from the urine test.
Dr. Edward Cohn of the National Institute of Drug Abuse.
You'd have to use either a blood or a saliva test to tell you if the person was under the influence of the drug at the time.
This is the follow-up confirmation test that will show whether your first 2 tests were right.
That's correct.
Initially, your testing showed amphetamines in one of the urine specimens, right?
That's correct.
What do you see now?
This sample is negative.
Negative?
Right.
What do you suppose it was?
This is a good indication this person was on cold medication.
So if a lab stopped short after that first test and showed that person positive, you'd probably be out of a job today.
That's correct.
And the other sample, which showed positive for cocaine...
We did the screening twice. Both times it was positive for cocaine. And we did the confirmation, and our confirmation also showing is positive for cocaine.
Nearly 1 out of every 6 workers tested will come up positive for drugs.
You got one, yeah. Now, as part of the final field training, we will take and break into teams of 2.
Trainees of professional law enforcement, an Ohio firm that provides spies in the workplace. Tonight, they're getting a final assignment, a shot of reality.
We're going to go to some of the area bars. You will be allowed to make and set up drug purchases.
Do we have a limit on what to spend?
Yeah, we don't want to take and get into any large-scale dealing, basically. We want to stay, if we can pick up a bag of dope, quarter gram of cocaine. If they have a joint, say, let's go outside and smoke a joint, all right?
48 hours undercover cameras record the action.
Hi. How you doing? Good.
Are you waiting on someone? I don't want to interrupt anything.
Before long, one of them finds a woman willing to sell him drugs.
You pick it up pretty easy?
Got 25 bucks on you? How about we go outside and take a look? I got my car outside.
You're
sweetie. You just made our night. I never even thought about getting any crack.
A few minutes later, the same woman offers to sell to other trainees.
I'll tell you, I got a couple rocks here, I'll say ya. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Take it easy.
Uh-huh.
Oh, baby.
Make sure I've got my key. Sure thing.
You got your key?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
For the trainees, it's almost too good to be true.
We will have coffee.
Well, you're back. You survived. How'd it go?
Real good.
Good. Think so? Good. Was it easy or hard?
Surprisingly easy. Mine was.
Close to the real thing as it gets, you suppose?
I think this is about as close as it gets, yes.
This is the real thing.
Yeah.
Recognize everybody, you know what they look like, get the license numbers off the cars.
Bill Taylor is president of Professional Law Enforcement.
Remember what time it was, all the good stuff you've been working on now, all right? You got to realize this is a training session, all right? So here's the place we want you to screw up. Just show you what happens in life. I want you to meet a police officer.
I knew it. I said,
Mary Spencer works for the city of Eaton. She's a police officer out there, and she was kind enough to come in and help us this operation. You dog, you. We're fighting a so-called war on drugs. Every war we've ever fought in this country, it takes spies, it takes people to infiltrate to find out what the other side's doing. That's what we're here for.
Hand behind your back. Put your other hand behind your back.
Phoenix, Arizona. Undercover cops bust recreational drug users.
You have the right to remain silent.
This is middle class, upper middle class.
Let's go, guys.
Don't you have anything better else to do?
Don't step on your shoes.
Saw the passenger cutting a line of coke on a tape cassette player.
The straws on that side right there.
The coke's in here. Small amounts of cocaine and marijuana.
Probably a quarter gram of cocaine. The majority of the people don't deal in drugs, don't deal in crimes.
Where are we going?
Going to jail.
Going to jail?
Yeah. Their everyday life is law-abiding citizens.
Possession and use. That's what you guys are under arrest for.
But,
it's a felony in the state. Punishable in prison by a year and a half.
But is this kind of arrest worthwhile? A wise use of police officers' time? Smoking a joint is criminal in Arizona, but what are its physical effects?
Get ready. Puff. Marijuana cigarettes inserted into that plastic holder so we can get an estimate of exactly how much smoke is going into the subject's lungs.
At Baltimore's Johns Hopkins University, researchers test the effects of smoking marijuana.
We pace them at 60-second intervals for this particular experiment.
A computer tests the volunteers before and afterward.
What have you learned doing these studies about impaired performance from marijuana, if there is any?
There appears to be an impairment, but you really have to give the subjects a lot of marijuana.
So in terms of drugs in the workplace, a guy who goes out and smokes a couple of joints on Saturday night is not going to be impaired when he shows up on the job on Monday morning.
Probably not.
The effects of cocaine come on very quickly.
Down the hall, experienced volunteers inject cocaine.
The rush maybe lasts about 5, maybe 10 minutes. Basically, you be sitting, you be still, and you wouldn't be like driving or anything like that. And you'll sit and enjoy the high. And after you do with your rush, you go back to doing what you was doing, because you'll still feel up, but you'll be more in control.
You can go back to work.
Yes, you can go back to work.
It's very seductive.
Dr. George Bigelow directs the research.
But the user who stops and has one hit, like the old...
Right. The user who stops and has one hit will have a feeling of self-confidence, euphoria perhaps, generally good mood, and probably not much in the way of measurable behavioral impairment.
How do you feel now? Is the rush over?
Well, yeah, the rush is over. Right now, I'm just feeling the cocaine feeling.
What's that? What's the cocaine feeling?
Well, you feel up, fidgety. Also, it makes your voice, slur and so forth, But I feel all right. I feel nice just sitting there, relaxing.
At each minute, he's rating the strength of the drug effect, how much he likes it, rush, any desire he has for cocaine.
Did you ever do coke on the job?
Yes, I have. I would feel more motivated to work sometimes. And depending on the drug I was doing, I might slouch. But cocaine usually kept me up, where sometimes I get more done than I planned.
This is a circular lights task. It measures hand-eye coordination.
1 hour and 40 minutes after injecting cocaine, he'll score about what a drug-free person would on this test.
It always seems pleasant and harmless at the beginning, because initially people don't experience any problems. They experience the good mood. So other people see them using the drug, say, gee, this is not a harmful drug. There's no problem. 3 to 5 years later, after a period of chronic use, they look back at that person and say, hey, it did produce use. He kept going. He didn't just stop at that nice mood.
Is the problem that you always want to do one more? Is that
Always. Because cocaine is like a repeated thing. You want to do one, then do another, then do another, then do another.
If you miss work, it's not that one hit did it, I take it. It's that you're out there.
If you do it from 5, maybe 6 o'clock to 2, 3, maybe 4 in the morning, and waking up in the morning is very hard. And going to work I don't think that's at hand. You might not even make it to work that day.
We drank. We used speed, cocaine, Valium. I mean,
it was pretty acceptable. I remember going into work some days and people saying, boy, you look like you really tied one on. Go in the back room, there's a half a gram for you.
I used to get high before I went to work. I used to smoke a joint or two, pop a few Valiums, get to work, and if no one was around, do a couple of shots.
Working men and working women with one thing in common.
I really got sick and tired of being sick and tired.
They are all recovering drug addicts.
At that particular time, I was a fireman.
All went through treatment here at New Jersey's Fair Oaks Hospital.
By the end...
Suzanne was a student and bartender in South Carolina.
I was drinking on my way to work, and then we would have... I and other people would do cocaine to get through our shift at work because we'd get so tired, just because once you got off work at night, you'd go out and party. And then you'd get to bed around like 6 o'clock in the morning, and by the time you woke up, you were completely exhausted. It wasn't like you had slept, and you'd have to go back to work again.
My drugs of choice was mainly cocaine, amphetamines when I couldn't get cocaine.
Mike was a Las Vegas card dealer.
It was an effort to think at work unless I was high on cocaine. It's just, my mind wouldn't work. So every day I had to walk past peers I'd worked with for years who I knew were using cocaine as well. It was just such a temptation. I couldn't get past them without saying, okay, give me another gram.
The rules were you could get fired for this.
Sure. But a lot of supervisors were getting high, too.
At what age did you go to work on Wall Street?
Oh, I didn't start Wall Street until maybe 6 years ago.
Tim is a New York City stockbroker.
When you came to Wall Street, you had a problem.
Oh, I had a problem. I was born with a problem.
Did it get worse when you worked on Wall Street, stay about the same, or get better?
Well, it got worse. The progressiveness, the compound progressiveness of the disease just took off because I had means in terms of money, and I had a place where entertaining using was acceptable.
Any trouble getting in?
No. Not if you wanted it bad enough.
Did your employer say, listen, I think you got a problem, you better straighten yourself up?
No.
Did it affect your work?
Yeah. I mean, the dollar value of mistakes I made or what have you, I haven't even begun to count yet.
I had started with a crisis intervention social service agency, which specialized in helping people with drug and alcohol problems. But I have to be honest, the counselors had more drug and alcohol problems than the patients who came in the door. We all gravitated to each other, and we found each other. That's where I first got into drugs, and then I later sold them to surgeons.
You sold drugs to surgeons?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're not making that up?
No.
Is the belief widespread that, well, if you do drugs, it makes you a better salesman, makes you better at figuring out what's going on, increases your performance?
I think that's part of the delusion of the disease. I believed that I was functioning better But in looking back in retrospect, no, it was all part of the delusion.
You've obviously done a lot of thinking about this. What's the single most important thing we should know about drugs in the workplace and workers in drugs?
If an employer catches somebody, let's say, through a urine screen or however it's done, if they notice it through performance, a very tough line, forcing treatment, I think, is absolutely the key to helping someone get well, because denial is so powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not bad. How you doing? My workplace, I would not trade it. It's been a great life.
How do you like it out in Seattle?
It rains too much, but it's nice.
4 years ago, cocaine and alcohol nearly caused John Lucas of the Seattle Supersonics to foul out of his workplace for good.
People always kept saying to me, "You're gonna lose your basketball career." I get temper. No, I almost lost my whole life. But I was always looking for something to be accepted. Then I got involved in cocaine, and man, I found it, and it turned on me very, very quickly.
Lucas was with the Houston Rockets when he began missing practices and games.
I was really running a course to get caught. I wanted to stop. I didn't know how.
After failing a urine test, Lucas entered rehabilitation for the first time.
Came out of treatment, and I began to get a feel of what it was that I had, but I wasn't ready to stop. I hadn't lost anything. I still had my job, still making a lucrative sum of money.
You didn't hit bottom yet.
And I hadn't hit bottom.
Back with Houston, Lucas began missing practices again. They make you take a urine test then?
Yeah, took another urine test.
And did you think the same thing? Uh-oh.
No, I knew.
You knew?
I said, I'm going to break the bottom. I know this test is positive. And what went over me was, whew, I was living with this monster on my shoulder.
He entered treatment for a second time. The NBA allows players 2 shots at recovery. A third violation, and they're banned from the league.
I remember saying, I am so glad it's over. But if that's what it took for me to be where I am today, I'm grateful.
He is basically a good guy who made a mistake.
Del Harris is coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. He gave Lucas a third chance when he signed him with the Bucks 2 seasons ago. Why should someone be given a second or even a third chance?
Other than that's the thing to do in life, I couldn't guarantee anything, but I did have to, say that I thought he could do it.
How much of a risk were the Bucks taking at that time? A guy who's been in rehab twice, talked the talk before?
You're right.
How much of a risk was that?
Major league. Major league. People said I'd never play again. I want to play till I'm 40 now. All right, big boy. I'm glad to be home.
Lucas left the Bucks last season to join the Sonics. Today, he's back in Milwaukee to play against his old team.
How's life treating you?
Good.
In Seattle?
Good.
But first, an important visit to Alcoholics Anonymous.
I just have to pick up a chip. This 3-year chip means that for 3 years, right here, that I'm getting, for 3 years, that's my 3-year birthday. And that's very special to me. It's been a tough road to this recovery. Been more than every city on this road trip. Everything now for me centers around meetings for AA. 6:30 in the morning, a little early. Used to come here every morning when I was in Milwaukee. Frank! Run it out!
During his own rehabilitation, Lucas developed this early morning workout class for fellow patients.
Right here, come here. It's a good chance to give it back, to share some of my experience and listen to some experience. I get some peace of mind. I get me out of this. If we sat down and told our stories, they would all be pretty much the same. I'm not unique. I just happen to play basketball. I don't play basketball the way I used to play. And I'm having to have to watch younger guys do what I love to do the best. But the sun comes up another day.
John Lucas still has a lot of friends here in Milwaukee.
Got a lot of friends wherever he goes.
The Sonics lost to the Bucks, but for John Lucas, it was another winning day in the workplace.
Without being sober, I don't have my family, I don't have the basketball, I don't have any of it. And so sobriety is far most important thing in my life. It's like hitting a winning bucket in a game.
Just last month, the Supreme Court upheld mandatory drug testing for government workers in sensitive jobs. If you add workers in private industry who are not protected by the Constitution in the workplace, an estimated 20 million Americans will face drug tests in the next year. Most experts agree that testing alone is just part of the answer, that catching drug users is like stopping drugs at the border. It's important, but as long as Americans need drugs in their lives, it's not enough. I'm Dan Rather. Until next week, that's 48 hours.
Who says 35 cents will get you nothing today? If you can get a whole half candy bar and exotic plant.
This time I better win.
America's get-rich-quick gamble.
Money, 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 money.
The winners.
There's no chemical combination that will really give you a high like that.
The losers.
The only thing she said was, Mom.